Whether you realize it or not, the twin flame journey begins at conception. So I'm going to share with you in this video my own experience with my own twin flame son and his conception and how that has played out throughout his life and is coming full circle as he just recently married his twin flame. Hello, fellow flames. In case we haven't met, my name is Dr. Harmony, and I will be live fearless, live loved, and live free. In this episode of Twin Flame Confessions, I'm going to share with you my own experience, my own journey with the concept of our mission begins at conception. And I'm going to share with you how that links to my twin flame son and our joint mission together in the journey that I've had with him. So bear with me, number one, because this is probably some of the deepest information personally that I have shared to date. This hasn't came out in any other content out there, including my books. There's more that will come. So this is the first time this particular message has been delivered, and I always knew that it would be delivered, and I also had no problem delivering it. I just didn't know when it was the appropriate time. And as always, I go by what and when things arise. And my son, excuse me, he just got married this last weekend to his twin flame. And so I've been going down memory lane for the last 2 to 3 weeks. I mean, it's been coming longer than that, but it's been picking up speed. And my connection to him, our journey, and then my own revisiting everything for more healing and completion and closure, and bringing everything in my own journey full circle as well. So we're going to start by talking about the twin flame conception and how our mission starts then. And then we'll move forward from there. And there will be probably multiple different parts to this, so be sure to track the parts. And I also have a couple surprises along the way that I'm going to share with you throughout the parts that is in relation to some really cool, fun things related to my son and his journey. So there'll be extra little tidbits that you'll want to catch, the other links to other videos and other resources that I'll share along the way. So, as we know, we choose our parents. And so in this particular instance, my son chose me. And I also know my son hasn't been fully awakened to as much spiritual connection. So I've done some work to the higher self along this journey, that as when we work with our parents and we do our childhood wound clearing, if we have children that doesn't have to be twin flames either, but just our children, we can also work with our children that maybe aren't as awakened to go to the higher self and clear and complete our contracts with them, so that helps complete their contract and frees them up from what they're obligated to learn and experience with you. So when my son chose me as his mom, he chose some very deep lessons that mirror for both of us. And I'm just going to go into that story a little bit and share the depths of that. So I had been a single mom already. My parents, being very religious, was worried and fearful that I would get pregnant out of wedlock. And so they married me off at 15 years old. And in that marriage, I had a child and got divorced from that very early on. And that is my daughter, actually. And that is its own story and its own karma that's been cleared. And she represents more of the karmic past, and my son's more of the future, and more of like both sides of where I've been and where I'm going kind of concept. Son being where I'm going, daughter being kind of helping clear the karma. Multiple times we've been sisters in past lives. But in that process, then I had been a single mom already, and I had ended up in another relationship with someone else that also then was a very short-lived marriage. He had been pretty much like I want to say a high school sweetheart, but it was one way technically. I, at the time, didn't really, want that relationship with him, but he did. So he like sort of chased me like our whole entire school years, all the way up to high school and past. And so I was going through things with parents, and he was the only person that was there for me. And we ended up getting together, and we ended up, getting married. And in the process of that, we got a divorce because of different things. So a whole story in itself. But when we did, I ended up in this relationship that was what most people think of as their twin flame journey. And it was the runner chaser, and I was the chaser, and it was like OCD. And, I cleared this OCD stuff at a very young age. And this particular guy had been going back and forth between me and another person, and just the whole player thing. And bottom line is, I ended up pregnant. I had switched from being on an IUD onto the pill, never experienced another period. And at that time, this runner chaser person basically, wanted nothing to do with me and the child when I told him I was pregnant. And I was divorced from the other person that was chasing me, still wanting me back and doing whatever it would take to basically get me back. And once again, I sort of ended up back in his arms because he was the only person that was there for me. My family wasn't even there for me during these times of trouble. They basically shunned me and outcasted me. And I even went to live with somebody else around that time frame, away from my family. And so in this, though, I knew that if I was pregnant, because I wasn't for sure. Here's the thing. I was not sure I was pregnant, except for when I went from the IUD to the birth control. I had no idea that, I was pregnant, because basically I switched methods, basically. And the doctors gave me every test you could think about under the sun, 3 pregnancy tests, a urinalysis, a vaginal exam, 9 tubes of blood drawn out in one time. And they basically said, we don't know what's wrong with you, but there's one thing we can tell you for sure is you are not pregnant. And the thing was, because I'd already been a single mom, and I'd already had basically, no father involved technically in this. It was already abandoned being pregnant with one person. The other person, it seemed like it was compromising to go back to him just because I was pregnant and needed somebody for support. And so I was opting for an abortion. And at that time, I just knew that, I didn't want to have this child. I didn't want to bring another child into this mess, and I already was a single mom. So long story short, 5 months into this, I ended up going to a specialist, and the specialist got out the stethoscope and said, you are pregnant. So whenever they did all these tests on me then and did the ultrasound and said, yep, you are pregnant, here's the baby. Basically, I was already moved into the midway through the mid-second trimester, and you can't get legally an abortion past your first trimester. So it was a divine appointment. I always said my son was hidden, because I really would have not had him. He would not be here today if I hadn't known I was pregnant. I would have got an abortion. Now, as that kind of moves forward, then when he came into this world, there was a 3 to 4 week window between fathers of me not really knowing who the father was. And so then my due date kept getting moved around back and forth. It was ping-ponging between kind of the fathers. And then I ended up going in for a checkup, and they said, oh, you're dilated to 5. So let's go ahead and induce you, because once this goes, it's going to be really quick. So I went in to be induced actually the day before my birthday. So he was born the day before my birthday. And it kind of came that he was my present and he was my gift. And I always said, at the age of 22, I never got any older because everything revolved around him after that. And all the birthdays was his birthdays. And so, I was great with that because I felt like I was preserved, and I put all the focus on him, and ended up he was the greatest gift of my entire life. But as he came into the birthing process, or through this birthing process, he literally almost died in the process. So because I was kind of small in the canal, and because they had induced me and he had not dropped down enough and really wasn't ripe enough, he not only did he have the cord wrapped around his neck 3 times, which is like a persecution clearing and the karma of that, but he also had to be pulled out of me with suction. And the doctor, I remember seeing him have the suction on his head and pulling to the point where he basically had his foot on the table, pulling him out of me. You got to realize, I always talk about the birthing process, how you come into this world represents a lot about your life and about how you go forward, and the karma you have to clear in that, and why you chose your parents. And that's in the Reprogram Your Childhood Wounds, the first module of the rebirthing process. So if you've not checked that out before, I'll have a link below. So make sure that you check that out, the first module of why you chose your parents and to do a rebirthing process. And the way you came in through your birthing process represents so much. So here in this particular case with my son having had to have CPR for 20 minutes, otherwise he would have died, he was meant to be here. This is where I'm saying this mission began at conception, because basically we were already doing a karmic clearing, and it was like he was facilitating this with me and helping me do this clearing for our bloodline, basically. And what the bloodline clearing really was clearing was multiple things. It was clearing, one, the illegitimate children and the concept of births that were considered illegitimate if you didn't have a father that was available. And granted, now my ex-husband, that has been the long-term partner that I wrote about in Twin Flame Codebreaker, he adopted my son as him and I were getting a divorce, and he was also an illegitimate child, never knew his own father. And now he really has came to bat for, children and women in his life that's had children without men in their lives. And he's been the one to raise them, and he's papa to the grandchildren and all these things. So, I can't say enough greatness about him and the connection I've had with him. But me and my son really came here to clear this concept of the illegitimate children. And how that also relates to this is my dad technically was born out of wedlock itself. My grandmother was the housekeeper for my grandfather and his wife at the time. And the wife of my grandfather, she was on her deathbed and was dying of some illness way back in the day. And so my grandmother had gotten pregnant before, as this was all happening, and then she passed. And then my grandfather married my grandmother after after his wife had passed, and married my grandmother. And then my dad had his own story of pretty much barely made it into this world as well. But on the flip side of that, the way I see this is my parents, so my mom more than anything, was afraid I would get pregnant out of wedlock. And our soul wants to know both balance. And we do this clearing where, it's like on one end, of some karma, my parents married me off so that I wouldn't get pregnant out of wedlock, which I didn't with my daughter. But on the flip side, I basically did with my son. And then it's almost like clearing in the bloodline. Like my dad basically came into this earth being out of wedlock, and then, and then basically my son was, but my son was more abandoned than my father was. His father actually came in and married my grandmother. So this helps. I've always known I've really represented a lot to do with single moms. And then even deeper than that, I know that for our bloodline clearing, there's been a lot of poverty in the family and my mom's side of the family and both sides of their family, from things that go back through their ancestors and generation to generation. And so for me, I also had a past life that was connected to poverty. And so I've not been in exactly like poverty this lifetime, but I've been also bridging out of where I'd had some financial things from in the past and things that I had to clear and things connected to poverty and clearing the poverty for the family. And so it's like my son came in as this representation of being like helping at a very like early on stage of clearing this bloodline through some of these pieces. And granted, he's had his own like twin flame karmic journey to go through with a karmic partner that I'll share in a part 2 of this, if like a little bit more of his journey and what it's like to raise a twin flame child. And I've only known consciously about him and his twin flame journey for just over 2 years. And it was an awakening I even went through. And I also was awakening at the same time with his karmic partner, was also a twin flame. And now she's been married to her twin flame for a couple of years. And that was like a 7-year relationship before his twin flame had even came in. So there's a lot that's continued on this. And his lineage with that is not only him being abandoned, but then also not being able to fulfill the role of an abandoned karmic partner that her dad had abandoned her through a divorce, and he couldn't fill that role. And it, that's bringing like I can just see everything coming full circle. I can see both sides of the karma. I can see where on one side things were taking place to create a situation such as abandonment, and on the flip side being abandoned basically and abandoning basically, to where you get both sides that are happening to bring the full balance to the karma. And so anyway, like I just really wanted to share this because so many people I think out there probably have twin flames that are their children, and they may or may not know it. And that the key in this is that we know when we conceive and when we come into the conception what the journey is about. We know that being like he had a very specific mission to get here. And had I had that abortion, he wouldn't have been with his twin flame. And it was meant to be that they be together to create this unconditional love vibration. And so I have to tell you something else of how this connects to some things. My family took it upon themselves to tell him about one father not being his, because he thought one of them was, and he didn't know about the other one being in the picture that had first abandoned him. And I planned to tell him, but he was very young. I also planned to tell him that I had planned to get an abortion, but my family told him everything. He used to go stay with them on 3-week cycle breaks when I would go to Logan Chiropractic School, and I would go to school year round, and we'd have these 3 weeks. He'd go stay out of town with my family. And he came back from a trip when he was about 6 to 8 years old, something like that, more closer to 8 probably. And my family had told him about the one father not being his father potentially, and the other father more likely was, and he knew nothing about the other one. And he was very angry and very upset with me, and more so that I didn't tell him. And it wasn't that I wasn't going to, it was really kind of robbed of that situation. And that's where this family things come in, and people take over in your lives, and it's about healing and clearing and taking back your power. So I've spent so much time taking back the power from my family. It's been an entire rebirth in and of itself. So I had really never had that conversation with my son about all those hidden truths, about the fact that, why I didn't want him, why I didn't want to bring a child into this world, another illegitimate child into this world I didn't want to do. And so here he got married over this weekend, and I went up a couple days early, and before all the festivities started, I was there one extra day, and I was able to share with him my journey. I knew it was time. I knew that as I was retracking all this over the last couple of weeks and realizing that more and more and more about the journey him and I have played out together, of how we've played out this twin flame mission. And it started at his conception, and how we've cleansed and cleared these bloodlines. And I just knew I had to talk to him. I knew I had to tell him. I knew I had to, in some ways, apologize to him, even though I did the best I knew how. And so we sit down, and just before that, as I said, a couple days prior to this wedding last week, and all those hidden truths just needed to be shared. And I let him know about, like as I mentioned, that I was a single mom, didn't want to bring another child into the world in the situation that I was in, and not be backed and be abandoned myself, and him be abandoned. And how that regardless, I told him, I said, you have been the greatest gift of my life, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And now I can look back and I can see our purpose. I can see our mission. I can see why what was happening, and how it needed to happen the way it happened. And I can also see how him having done some pre-karma clearing at conception, and throughout, his birthing process, and throughout his journey as a child, and then throughout his basically own karmic clearing that went on through high school into early college. The whole process is how he just married his twin flame. It was the most beautiful, beautiful experience. I want to share more with you about it because of how beautiful it is. And those of you that are like, is this journey real? And can I believe in it? And are twin flames real? As I'm always telling you, there's a bandwidth of this. And there's not everybody's in the same place of this. That means there's different waves of twins, and him and his twin flame are second wavers, which, by the way, I will make sure to put a link at the bottom here of a video in the description of a video that I did an interview a couple years ago with him and his twin flame at our awakening. And we talk about the awakening that at that time of my awakening and his twin flames awakening, to them being twin flames kind of at the same time. Her and I awakened at the same time. So make sure to watch that if you want to learn more about our story and his awakening and our connection of that. And continue watching as I share more about what it was like to raise him as a twin flame. Now looking back, and the synergy involved in that, and the journey involved in that, and the karma that was cleared in that. And I can, bringing this video kind of full circle here, I just can't stress enough of watching him glow this weekend. Sorry, I'm not even going to apologize. I told you this was deep. Watching him glow, watching him in his element, and that's what every parent wants for their child, is them to experience peace and happiness, and to find the love of their life and experience the love of their life, right? And he did that. And he basically was sharing during the mom's sun dance how happy he was, and how he's like, his wife is so amazing, and how their life is just so beautiful, and they're so in love. And I reminded him, I said, she's amazing, but you got to remember, she's your equal mirror, and she's the reflection of you. And he smiled really big, and he said, that's because we're twin flames. And that made me smile really big, because then I knew, like, everything I did and everything I've done to this point was worth it. see him so happy. And that's the greatest gift back to me, for sure, that you could ever dream of. And those that followed me in this weekend, that have seen the love on my personal page and what I've posted, I want to thank all of you for the messages you've sent me, and for the gratitude that you've experienced sharing that journey with us, because it's been very beautiful. And so I want to share that with you guys today. Get myself together. So I want to share with you guys today the synergy, the beauty that they have. And I'm going to place right up here and below a link to a video that is their first dance. And you will get to see their light and their glow together and how synergistically they flow. And they dance through life like this. And just know they've never been dancers, and they aren't dancing people that get out and just do this kind of dance that they did. But they put everything they touched about this wedding had something symbolic to it, down to the ceremony and their vows. And I'll share more about that in another video because I don't want to make that too long. But stay tuned, because I want to share more about what it was like to raise him and the things that he's taught me and the things that they've taught me in their union and reunion. And this one, I kind of wanted to really keep it more to the mission of Twin Flames, and that, showing you that mission started at conception. So please make sure to comment and let me know if this has inspired you in any way. And make sure you check out that video. It's just so beautiful. And let me know what you think. And stay tuned for the next series. And I want to wish all of you so much love. And I hope that this twin flame love that they share can somehow ripple into your own life from this experience. And know that this is real. And so, be sure to like, comment, share the shine, and may you always face your fears, find freedom, and glow forward on fire. Namaste.